Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. It's that time of year again, time to look at my Formula 1 predictions from all the way back on the 1st of March. I've looked at them already and I know they're bad. They are really, really bad. Just like my reaction to my Formula E predictions, I'm going to count the places I was wrong by for a total score. My Formula E predictions were out by 82 places. Formula 1 predictions should be a lot less than that. There are less teams and drivers. It's generally more predictable. If that score is over 50, then I will be very disappointed. And as always, I'll try to work around mid-season replacements. There are quite a few in 2024. I'll point it out when it comes up. With that, make sure you subscribe and let's jump into this look at my 2024 Formula 1 predictions.
Haas 10th with Kevin Magnussen 20th and Nico Hülkenberg 19th. Now obviously there has been a big shake-up at Haas. Gunther Steiner is gone. They've hired from within to replace him. Some say this shows a lack of ambition and Gene Haas is not willing to throw the money at the project, and maybe it's time they, shuffle out, let other teams come in. But I don't see it like that. I think this is going to be the start of a reboot, basically, for Haas. They're going to go back to basics, start again, and really this is just a hangover year. So I'm not expecting very much from the team. They were struggling last year. I think they're going to struggle this year. Magnussen and Hülkenberg are both capable of putting in some good qualifying performances, and occasionally you'll see them in the higher end of the midfield in a race, but they can't do it throughout the season. I do think they'll both score points. I think everyone in the championship will score points this year, but I do think Haas are going to really struggle, especially as the year goes on. I think they're going to struggle in development, and they are going to fall sort of down the order. Last, and both drivers last.
I was very, very wrong about Haas. I presumed Ayu Komatsu was a lazy hire from within the company to replace Gunther Steiner, and it was all part of a plot to work their way out of Formula 1. Well, Ayu Komatsu was a revelation. Haas have had their strongest year since 2018, they have links with Toyota now, and in Oliver Behrman, they look to have a young star on their books for 2025. I'm not sure the signing of Esteban Ocon is a good move. He's a poor replacement for Nico Hülkenberg, but they'll be in a good position to match this season next year. I said Haas would be last. They were 7th. So that is 3 points already. Kevin Magnussen finishing 15th instead of 20th. That's another 5. And Hülkenberg was 11th instead of 19th. So one team in, and I'm already down by 16 points. I don't know why I thought Haas would be rock bottom, but I was very wrong.
Stake F1 9th with Guan Yu Zhou 17th and Valtteri Bottas 14th. Again, like Haas, I think the next couple of years are going to be rough for Stake. I think the main thing for this team is just to exist until Audi get there. Audi will be running the team in 2026, and that's when we'll see big changes. Possibly money thrown at it and more advancements. That will have a big difference. I think they'll probably have a different driver lineup then as well. Hopefully, maybe a bit of consistency and a bit of strong reliability might help the team score points. But this is definitely a holdover year for Stake.
I was close with Stake Sauber, but I didn't envision them having as terrible a year as they went on to have. Guan Yu Zhou took the team's only points finish with an 8th place at Qatar, whilst Valtteri Bottas scored nothing. Only 1 place out for Sauber, but I was 8 places out for Bottas and 5 for Zhou. 30 points out and we are only 2 teams in. This is ridiculous, but to be fair, it felt like Sauber weren't even trying at times. They did not improve whatsoever throughout the year. They are waiting for Audi, and knowing that, it seems obvious they would be last.
Williams 8th with Logan Sargent 18th and Alexander Albon 15th. Williams are always a hard team to judge because last year we saw Sargent only scored points at one race, and even then only because other cars were disqualified. But Alexander Albon put in some fantastic performances and actually scored decent points for the team. I think Williams will move ahead of some of their rivals, and I think Alexander Albon will once again be a major feature in the midfield. Logan Sargent, I do think he's better than Nicholas Latifi, but I can't see him being a major point scorer. He did impress at times last year, but there were other occasions where his performances were a little flat. And I imagine that's going to be the sort of level he's at again this year. Maybe scraping the odd points finish here and there. Hopefully he does well in America. But it's not going to be a super year for Sargent. And I don't know if he'll survive, because there's a lot of good Williams Academy drivers like Zach O'Sullivan and Franco Colapinto. So it's still a die for Sargent. I think he needs to have a good year. I don't think he's going to quite manage it. But Alex Albon, I'm sure, will do well for the team.
I don't know why I was so confident that Logan Sargent was going to finish as high as 18th. He'd sell his left testicle to finish that high in the championship. Not too far off with Williams, or either Williams driver. Franco Colapinto finished 19th, so if I was counting him instead of Logan Sargent, then I would only lose a point. But that is another point for Williams, 5 for Logan Sargent and 1 for Alexander Albon. So close on the Thai superstar. If he scored 4 more points, I would have been spot on. As it is, I'm now out by 37 points.
Alpine 7th, with Ocon 16th, and Gasly 10th. Alpine are always a disappointment. They've never really taken that final step to being anywhere near the front of the field. And with Aston Martin and McLaren taking a big step forward last year, Alpine kind of been left behind on their own in the midfield. They were behind the top teams and ahead of the backmarker teams. This year, I think they're going to be sucked further back towards the tail end of the field. Esteban Ocon's going to have a horrible year, which I'm sure is not the first time I've predicted that, but in 2026, I think Ocon will be gone from Formula 1, and I think the next couple of years are going to be hard for him. Gasly, he's a good driver. I think he'll do well enough. He'll score some decent points. Maybe grab a shock podium somewhere. I think for Gasly this year could be an audition for a seat at Mercedes in 2025. We'll have to wait and see on that. But generally, I think we're going to see Gasly-like performances from Gasly and a tough year from Ocon. And I think Alpine are in a bad place right now, and they need to turn it around. Maybe they can start by deciding on a livery and sticking with it.
I almost nailed Alpine, and I'm very lucky because if it was not for that double podium at Brazil, this would have been a prediction much further away from the truth. But I said Pierre Gasly was going to finish 10th, and he did indeed finish 10th, scoring enough points to bring Alpine up to 6th instead of 7th, whilst Esteban Ocon actually finished 14th instead of my predicted 16th, so only 3 points out on Alpine. Takes it up to 40, but I can be proud of this prediction. I was really close to getting right the least predictable team on the grid. Alpine are up and down the midfield like crazy, and this was not a good year for the team. They were really lucky to stick it in 6th place, and it was mostly down to Pierre Gasly scoring enough points for 10th place. It'll be interesting to see if Jack Doohan and Mercedes engines help stabilise this manic team.
RB 6th, with Ricciardo 13th and Tsunoda 12th. I think they will make improvements this year. There's a big shake-up at the team. They are sort of following in Red Bull's footsteps a bit more than they have in the last few years, where they've tried to strike it alone and it's not really worked out. This is more Red Bull light. I think Ricciardo and Tsunoda will have average years. Better than last year. Tsunoda especially will score some points. But it'll be midfield. They'll jump Alpine. They'll finish 6th. Nothing special. Hate the name.
I don't know why I thought RB would be the best of the midfield, especially with Daniel Ricciardo long past his best and dragging the team back from a much touted 6th place finish. They should be disappointed to lose out to Alpine and Haas because they have the resources to beat those teams and lead the midfield. But whilst I was a couple out on RB and Daniel Ricciardo was wrong by 4 places, and adding Liam Lawson's points total doesn't do much to help, I got Yuki Tsunoda spot on. So far I have predicted Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda perfectly, and everything else I have been completely wrong on. And to be honest, I think Tsunoda could have done better than this. He should have been top 10 in 2024. Depending on what happens in the future, this might have been his final chance to break the top 10. Anyway, that's another 6 places out, and now we are up to 46. We are only halfway through the field.
Aston Martin 5th, with Lance Stroll 11th and Fernando Alonso 8th. Aston Martin were superb at the start of last year. We all know that. Alonso especially put in some fantastic performances and took a handful of podiums. It didn't last. Over the course of the year they struggled. And I can't see Aston Martin really managing that level of performance again this year. I think in another couple of years they'll have another good go at it, but I think that opportunity to take a win has slipped them by, and it has slipped Alonso by. I think podiums, especially for Alonso, are definitely on the cards, but I don't think they're going to score as many points as they did in 2023, and I think Aston Martin are going to trail McLaren. Now, Alonso will still have a half decent season, but he is going to drop to 8th. Lance Stroll just does not score enough points. He's going to be lower end of the midfield again, down in 11th. We'll see a couple of good performances, maybe finishing in top 5 a couple of times, but it's going to be a typical Stroll season. Alonso will carry the team, but he just can't carry the team enough on his own, and it's going to be pretty mediocre for them in 2024, but they're ambitious, they're doing big things. Expect them to bounce back at some point.
Aston Martin are the first team I have actually managed to place correctly. Go me. One place out for Fernando Alonso as well, but he was a long way behind 8th place Sergio Perez, so it wasn't even a close 9th. As for Lance Stroll, well, 11th was extremely optimistic. I definitely predicted him to finish too close to Alonso. That being said, he still managed to finish in 13th, so I was only wrong by 2 places. In total, that's 3 out for Aston Martin. That's 49, and we are already closing in on my target of 50, with 4 teams still to go. I think I predicted Aston Martin not keeping up their momentum from 2023, and that's the only reason these predictions were closer than others.
McLaren 4th, with Oscar Piastri 9th and Lando Norris 7th. Again, I think McLaren are going to have a fairly mediocre year. They came on strong towards the tail end of last year, and it made up for a horrible start to the season. Maybe more middling, consistent performances in 2024. Lando Norris will do very, very well again. And I think podiums, again, will be on the cards. Would love to see him take his first win. But I think McLaren aren't going to be quite in with the top teams. I think it's going to be Lando Norris putting in some special performances. Although we did see Oscar Piastri put in some great performances as well. I wouldn't count him out, and I think they're going to score decent points over the course of the year. They'll beat Aston Martin, they won't be too far behind Mercedes, but McLaren will be the 4th best team this year.
Well, this is a slap in the face. Did anyone see McLaren coming on as strong as they did? With Lando Norris finishing 2nd overall, McLaren winning the Constructors, and even Oscar Piastri getting a top 4 in the championship. Again, I didn't think they'd managed to keep up with what has been the 3 top teams for a long time, but they surpassed all of them in 2024. Not only was I out by 3 on McLaren, but Oscar Piastri was out by 5, and Lando Norris also out by 5. By far the worst prediction on the list so far, so now we are on 62. These predictions might be the worst ones I have ever done. I really slept on McLaren, and I have paid the price. If you call McLaren ending their 26-year drought for the Constructors' title, and Lando Norris being Verstappen's closest challenger, then well done you. May I recommend a lottery ticket?
Mercedes 3rd, with George Russell 6th and Lewis Hamilton 3rd. Don't see big things changing at Mercedes. They looked very quick in testing at Bahrain, but it's not a given. And with Lewis Hamilton leaving, you're going to have to wonder how that's going to affect the mentality of the team as a whole. Obviously, he's been there a long time. Big part of the development of the car. And maybe that's something that will show more next year. But I think Hamilton and Russell are on for a similar year to what they had last year. Maybe one of them can take a win. Obviously, we're still in that big winless run for Lewis Hamilton. And maybe that's the aim, is to stop that before he leaves. Take one more win for Mercedes at least. But I don't really see them being in title contention. I think they'll fall behind Ferrari and Red Bull and not really catch them up, and I don't think Hamilton's going to be in title contention despite being in 3rd. Obviously, all eyes are on 2025 for Hamilton at Ferrari, but for now, I think Mercedes will have a pretty average season for them, for their high standard, but I think 3rd is decent enough for Lewis Hamilton to sort of leave them on a high note, even if it's not winning a championship.
Mercedes may have been worse than I thought they would be. Despite taking 4 wins in 2024, by the end of the year they were a long way behind the top 3 teams, but a long way ahead of the rest of the midfield teams. Lewis Hamilton had his worst season ever. I have mentioned that several times. I thought this would be a typical Lewis Hamilton year where he may not have the quickest car, but he will constantly pick up points. That was true to a certain extent, but he was often finishing in the middle of the points. I said he would be 3rd, he was 7th. So that's another 3 points, plus another one for Mercedes being 4th instead of 3rd, but George Russell is yet another one I got completely right. I thought he'd be behind Hamilton, but he only went and beat him again. I'm happy with that, despite being 66 places wrong.
Ferrari 2nd, with Carlos Sainz Jr. 5th, and Charles Leclerc 2nd. Now, I do feel sorry for Carlos Sainz Jr. I think he's been a good driver for Ferrari. He's taken a couple of wins for the team, and he's really had the harder of the... he's had more bad luck than Leclerc has had. Leclerc's made more mistakes, Sainz has had more bad luck. Charles Leclerc has something to prove this year. He has to prove to Ferrari he is better than Lewis Hamilton. He does not want Lewis Hamilton coming into Ferrari and taking over the first driver role and having to play second fiddle to the Brit. So Leclerc this year is going to be motivated to absolutely push it. I think he's going to iron out some of the mistakes. I think we're going to see some exceptional lap times. I think he's going to take more poles than Max Verstappen. And I think he is going to convert it into his most winning season ever. Maybe pose more of a threat to Red Bull as well, which would be nice to see. And Leclerc is a very, very good driver. I think he's going to give Lewis Hamilton a very hard time at Ferrari. I don't think it's going to be clear-cut for Hamilton. Maybe Leclerc has a championship run in him at some point. I don't think it'll be this year, but I think we are going to see a big improvement from the monogasque driver.
I was immensely close to nailing all 3 parts of my Ferrari prediction. I said Ferrari would be 2nd, they were 2nd. I said Carlos Sainz Jr. would end the year 5th, and he ended the year 5th. Mostly because he got appendicitis before the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So I am glad he suffered. I was only out by 1 place for Charles Leclerc. I thought he'd be the closest challenger to the title, and he lost out to Lando Norris, but he only lost out by 18 points. I was 1 win away from Leclerc getting 2nd and me getting everything Ferrari right. So that is now 67 with 1 team left, but I think this will make Ferrari one of the more interesting teams in 2025. Can they match this level again with Lewis Hamilton instead of Sainz? I'm already trying to figure it out for my next lot of Formula 1 predictions.
Red Bull 1st, with Sergio Perez 4th, and Max Verstappen 1st. Yeah, no big surprises here. Red Bull, I think, will still be on top. They just had too much of an advantage last year not to. 19 wins in 22 races for Verstappen was incredible. And I think he'll do something comparable, but nothing like that. Maybe 14, 15 wins. Easy championship. I think he will be relatively clear of Leclerc. I just think he'll be closer than last year. Perez, I think this is his end of the line. I think this is the last time we'll see Perez in a Red Bull. I can honestly see them swapping him for Liam Lawson in the season if it goes really badly for Perez. But failing that, I think next year we will see someone else in the Red Bull car. Probably Liam Lawson, but maybe Ricciardo or Tsunoda. Who knows? I think he'll take a win or 2. I think he'll help Red Bull to the Constructors' title, but that'll be his last hurrah. But I do think Max Verstappen will be champion.
And so I predicted Red Bull to finish 1st again. Of course I did. Max Verstappen had just come off a season of winning 19 of 22 races, with Sergio Perez taking 2 of the other 3. Red Bull dominated in 2023, but whilst Max Verstappen won a 4th championship in a row, it was a lot closer than the year previous, and Sergio Perez was a lot worse than I thought he would be, possibly for the last time. I got Max Verstappen right, but I feel that was the easiest prediction on the list, and he even made that difficult. I was 2 out for Red Bull, I said 1st, and they were 3rd. That takes us up to 69. But Sergio Perez really finishes off these awful predictions by finishing a distant 8th compared to the happy 4th I predicted. So that is 73 in total. Apparently I am completely clueless. So much for Formula 1 being predictable. So they were my predictions for the 2024 Formula 1 season. They were absolutely awful, especially McLaren and Haas. 73 places out, that's a big number. That's only 9 less than I got for my Formula E predictions in 2024. So either they were really good or these were truly awful. That being said, I got a few predictions right. Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, George Russell, Carlos Sainz Jr. and Max Verstappen, along with Aston Martin and Ferrari. That's 7 out of 30. It really was being so far off on Haas and McLaren that really hurt this list. I will try and do better next year, so subscribe so you don't miss my 2025 predictions. Let me know how you did in the comments below. what were your best and worst predictions for 2024. More Formula 1 videos later this week with some predictions for future grids. Thank you very much for watching and have a good one.